welcome to Interludes with Chris Mackenzie. And we have Bill Akers back with us again. Thank you, Bill, because you've got a long way to come. We do appreciate you making the effort and coming back in again.
Oh,
really, truly, really.
Oh, I'm flattered.
We were in the Australian Ballet, but I'm getting curious about some of the tours that you did, because I believe that was one of your favourite occupations, touring.
Oh, I hate touring. Absolutely hate it. You know, I'm like good wine. I don't travel well. When I go overseas, I get everything that's going. If I was travelling today, I'd have SARS in a minute, and the plane would be blown out of the sky in seconds. I just get everything that's going, you know. But I've broken my neck on tour. I've become ill on tour. You name it. But the places we've been, you see, the first tour we did was via the Lebanon, and I was the only person who did not get the dreaded illness in the company, because I refused to eat anything in the Lebanon. I just drank Chateau Margaux 1938.
Of course.
Which was supplied by one of the rich ladies there. So I thought, well, who needs, when you're drinking something that rich, you don't really need to eat anything. We went from there to Nice, where we couldn't afford to eat anything, and we rehearsed with Nureyev, Don Quixote and Raimonda.
Where did you play in Lebanon?
Oh, at that the
temple place?
Yes,
Baalbek.
Baalbek, yes. The wonderful, wonderful temple. We had some amazing experiences there. On the way there from Beirut, going up, you go through a place called Zahaleh. And Zahaleh was where this lady who actually ran the festival, Madame Katani, and the committee is a group of ladies that run it, and they run it brilliantly. And we stopped off, the whole company, at her house to have a party. And they have swimming pools and everything like that, and the food was just magnificent. But it was their home, so everything was perfectly all right to eat. And I was having a glass of this and that with it, you see. Yes. And I said, "This is magnificent wine. What is it?" And she handed me the bottle. And it was Chateau Margaux 1938. It would be worth today in the vicinity of something like $2,000 a bottle, I would think. And I said, "It's absolutely wonderful. Do you really like it?" And I said, "Yes." We have quite a supply. And I said, "Well, we had a lovely party. And when we got back to the hotel, I had to go to the Temple of Bacchus, which is where we were dancing, and have a look at that with Bobby Helpman. And when I got back to the hotel, in my room, there was a case of Chateau Margaux. And I thought, well, this is going to be a good trip. But you see, as far as eating is concerned, if you walked up the street, the local butcher had all the meat, it was terribly hot, of course, all hanging outside, and there were flies all over it and everything. Well, that rather put me off. And so I stuck to, bread and wine.
Chateau Margaux.
Well, bread and wine, you can't beat that. It's in the Bible.
Of course.
But we went then to Nice. The opening night in Baalbek, Elaine Fifield was dancing the second act of Swan Lake. And it was magical, this place. I mean, it's got these great pillars. It was actually rebuilt by Mark Antony as a summer palace for Cleopatra.
This is in Nice?
No, this is in Lebanon.
Oh, Lebanon, yes.
And it was rebuilt by Antony for Cleopatra as a summer palace. All I can say is they didn't seem to know much about hygienics in those days. But it was remarkable in that the switchboard, the electrical switchboard for running the lights, was 90 feet up one of these pillars.
Oh, that's
and the
handy.
The two boys that ran it actually used to scale up on painters' ladders slung together like this. It was death-defying. And this, on the opening night, we had, it's catch as catch can. We'd hung all the lights in the trees, in among the leaves, etc., so I could get all this leaf pattern all over the stage for the second act of Swan Lake. Decal plates, we call them, when you do them in the theatre, but you couldn't do it there. So we had this, and Elaine swept onto the stage. She does a great jeté onto the stage, the swan lake, and just at the moment she did, I was behind a rock, with my little run the show box,
Yes.
saying stand by Q1, stand by Q2, stand by, etc. And I said to Ahmed, who was on the switchboard, Ahmed, stand by Q1, go Q1. And it came up like a dream. It just looked wonderful. It went from dark to this beautiful moonlight scene.
Yeah.
And there was a great big natural moon in the sky up the back, which made it look wonderful.
Yes.
And it came out and I said, that's wonderful. I love you. And great. And I said, stand by Q2. 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 Go. And on comes the Swan Queen, you see. All the swans ran on. And then she jumped onto the stage like that. And just as she did, I heard the audience out, because I couldn't see them, going, oh. And I thought, she's died. And I didn't know what to do. I peered around the corner of the rock, and a great big white owl was flying around above like this, and it landed right at her feet and flapped like this. And she just did a pas de chat over it. She was unflappable, really, Elaine. Just jumped. Nothing can disturb my dancing. She just jumped over and went on with the show, and this thing flapped itself off the thing. Well, this apparently is a great omen, and it had never happened in something, or hadn't happened in something like 15 years or something. So I said to Ahmed, stand by Q3. Stand by Q3. Q3 go. Nothing happened. I said, Ahmed, Q3. He said, no. I said, what do you mean, no? He said, you didn't say you loved me after Q2. Well, these things happen. And, but we went from there to Nice, and from Nice we went to Liverpool, where I met wonderful, wonderful Peter Farmer, one of the world's greatest designers, who was a very shy young man about the age of 19, and Peggy was considering doing her first production of Giselle with the company. And Peter Farmer was to design it, you see, and he came to the hotel in Liverpool, and we met. And Peter Farmer is very, very shy, and he's about 6'3" and very thin, and he stoops rather a lot. And he was only about 19 at the time, and he has the whisper wheat. He says, "What's wabby?"
Oh, right.
Things like that, but in quite free British voice. And he's wonderfully funny and good. But he sat down at the thing, and Peggy said, now, Bill's got some ideas about how he wants the particular costumes done as far as it. I said, well, I want a shade of green that's, when you have black velvet and there's a certain, you brush it one way and it's sort of a dark, dark green underneath and so on. And he said, yes. And well, he just kept looking at me like this rather suspiciously. And I said, well, the princess costume, that, and if that can be echoed on the backcloth, because I want to light, and we want to backlight the backcloth. And we did all of this, you see, and away he went. He never ever came back. And I didn't, Kenneth Rowell wound up designing the
Where did he
production.
go?
Well, I asked him many, many years later when he came to do another ballet for us, and he said, you frightened me to such a degree I went away. And I said, I frightened you? Why did I frighten you? He said, you were so butch. I said, well, I just told you what we wanted. He said, but nobody ever done that before. So, and of course he became a dear, dear friend of mine, and his designs for the Australian Ballet are just superb. I mean, his Manon, which I chased, I got him that commission actually to do Manon, because it was originally designed by Georgiadis. We could never have afforded it with Georgiadis, and what he designed would never have fitted on Australian stages. So I suggested to Kenneth Macmillan that Peter Farmer design it, and he said, why? And I said, well, look, he works so well with the Australian Ballet, understands Australian touring conditions, and he said, and I said, the staff love him, and he really gets along with everybody, and they work very well. He said, I can't just appoint somebody as a designer because your staff like him. I said, believe you me, it's a help if they do. We've had others that they didn't.
I can imagine. Now listen, we're just going to have a little bit of a break for a lovely voice, Andrea Bocelli. Yes.
suoi sospiri si può morir di più non chiedo cielo si può morir di più non chiedo, si può morire, si può morire.
What a wonderful combination of talent, Andrea Bocelli and the Moscow Radio Symphony Orchestra.
Singing Una furtiva lagrima, down her cheek a pearly tear. And I said the reason that I chose that, for him to sing that, is that it's about crying, and he has a cry in his voice that's really quite good. And he makes me cry when I listen to it.
Oh dear, oh dear. What, are you all better now?
Yeah, oh yes, I'll get through.
Mop up your tears. Okay, so you're now, you've whizzed through Liverpool and left marks all over Baalbek, Nice, Liverpool. Where are you going now?
Well, we went, of course, from Liverpool to Glasgow, where we played the King's Theatre, and from Glasgow to the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, the first time we'd ever played there. And,
oh, really?
Yes. And it was a magical experience. The company was a tremendous success. We were terrified, we really were. We thought we were going too early. The company was only 3 years old when we played the Royal Opera House, and it was really very cheeky of us. But we went, and we were a great success. And we bit the bullet because we opened with Le Conservatoire, which is a Danish ballet and presents the Danish technique, the Bournonville technique, which is very difficult to do, but we had wonderful dancers, and it got rave notices. The press was astonished that we could do such a ballet, and we're brave enough to do it. But that was great, and Marilyn Jones and Brian Lawrence did a wonderful pas de deux from Namuna, and in black tabs, and they're both in white costumes, alone in the centre of this majestical stage in this glorious house. And the curtain went up, and there was a gasp like this, and they did the pas de deux, and there was wonderful applause. And the next day, because we changed the programme every day.
Oh, good heavens.
The people at Covent Garden actually took off a gigantic production of The Ring to put us on for 5 days.
How wonderful.
I mean, it was just amazing. They were wonderful to us. Lovely Mr. Bill Bundy. And I was... the next day, we were setting up the next programme, and Peggy rang up and she said, "Bill, we have to do the Namuna pas de deux this evening." And I said, "We can't. I haven't got any blacks. I've had to strike them to fit the other scenery in." She said, "I don't care how you do it. Do it." There's no wonder I called her Peggy Van Prague Bloody Matic. But I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I went to Bill Bundy and I said, he was the production administrator and a friend of mine. And I said, "Look, can I do it just with a totally empty stage? You know, all the scenery stacked at the side, no light there at all, just the spots on the dancers and a little bit of light on the floor and so on. And this vast open stage right off to the walls of the theatre like that." He said, "You can do what you bloody will like." And I said, "Well, that's very kind of you, thank you." And he said, "Not all." So we did it that way. The curtain went up. Well, the applause was deafening. It looked magnificent because it was in this vast space, you know, with no scenery, nothing at all. Just these two dancers, which looked like ants almost on the stage. But it was such a spectacular success. We got notices again the next day for it.
Oh, how marvellous.
It was great. Anyway, everybody had a great time, and Peggy was very clever because she and Bobby, there was always a little bit of a battle. They were both artistic directors, and
Bobby Helpman.
Of course, Bobby was very famous as a performer
Yeah.
there, and Peggy was famous as a ballet mistress there. So on the last night, they both came onto the stage, and Bobby Helpman's ballet was called Jürgen, a very beautiful Japanese ballet in which the girls wore all over white costumes and black wigs, and they had fans that were black on one side and brilliant orange on the other side. And at the end of the ballet, they turned them round like that to the brilliant orange, you see. And Bobby came on in his dinner jacket and bowed and brought the house down, and everybody applauded and stamped. And Peggy walked on in a beautiful evening gown, exactly the same colour as the fans.
Oh.
And I thought, oh, that's doing it, baby. It's really lovely. But, that season was tremendous. And after the opening night, Princess Margaret came round with the Earl of Snowdon, and they were presented all the way along we were presented all the way along the front line, and she got to me and she said, Mr. Akers, I very much liked the pattern that you had on the floor. We were doing Bobby Helpman's The Display, so it was all Australian leaf pattern and the thing that I invented called decal plate. And she said, I'd like you to tell me how it's done. Well, thinking she was making very polite conversation, I said, oh, well, it's a slide you put in a lamp and you point it and sharpen it up and so on and so forth. And she said, Mr. Akers, when I ask you a question, I really like to know the answer. Besides, my husband would like to know because he's in that business, so to speak. Oops. He was a photographer. So I said, yes, Your Royal Highness. So I took her over and I pulled the lamp to pieces and I showed her how it was. So she was fascinated at how it was done and so on. I said, of course, this lamp it's not quite as good as the way we do it in Australia because we have a different lantern. And she said, you have a different lantern? And we don't have it at Covent Garden. I said, well, you probably did have it here, but it's a slightly older lantern. It just happens to achieve this effect better than any other lantern. And she said, what do you think of this place? And I said, I think it's absolutely magnificent. Why? She said, no, I'm not talking about out there where the plush and the gilt is. Backstage here. And I said, oh, it's wonderful stuff. And she said, we've just given them £2 million to do it up, and I am the patron, it better be good. So what was the name of the lantern? And I said, Pattern 23W. And she said, oh, well, there was another story to do with Walter Burke after that, but it's got some words in it that I can't possibly repeat.
Right. Yes.
But with her, she can be very, very witty and funny.
Yes.
And left. When I got to Covent Garden the next morning, I was slightly late because my flat had been burgled. And Mr. Bundy was standing there and he said, what you been up to? I said, why? What's the matter? He said, look in a corner. And I looked in the corner and there was a large box which had enlarged letters on it, 12 by pattern 23Ws, William Akers for the use of, Royal Opera House.
Uh-oh.
And he said, I'll get my bloody head cut off. I said, well, I was flabbergasted. Anyway, we replaced the thing and did it all. And, every time I've played the garden since, that box is put in the corner with those lamps in it. I wouldn't use them now for quids, but they have replaced it with a better lamp. But, that was Covent Garden. And from there we went on tour through Europe with Nureyev, Fontaine. We went to firstly to the Palais de Sport in Paris, then we went to Denmark, and then to Germany, and then back to the Palais de Sport, and then yes, the second season it was at the Théâtre Champs-Élysées, but the first one was in the Palais de Sport, and that was the Palais de Sport is vast. It's like the Melbourne cricket ground with a roof on. Oh. It creates its own atmosphere inside the place, and we were there for... Oh, well, I went to inspect it beforehand, and I said to the man when we were there, I was going like this, and he said, last week we had the Russian circus here, and I said, yes, you can tell. I said, you will have it all cleaned up and everything for Dame Margot and all the rest of it. Yes, of course, it will be done. And we were there, and the season was a great success, but we were rehearsing the second act, Giselle, Pas de Deux, as an excerpt to be done with Rudy and Margot. And I had taken with me the cross and grave that we have in Australia. Well, of course, at the Palais de Sport, it looked 2 inches high. And Rudy walked on the stage and said, Bill, this is ridiculous. What are you doing? This little cross, what is this? You cannot see it here. And I said, oh, well, I said, it's the only one I've got. And he said, well, you go to the Paris Opera and they will give you another cross for me. They will do anything for me. And I said, well, I happen to know the Regisseur General of the Paris Opera, whose name's Olivier Clementieff. I rang him and he said, yes, Bill, come and have a look at anything that you want and we'll give to you. And so I went and the only cross I could find was one out of Spartacus, and it was about 14 feet high, you see, and a really big crucifix for Spartacus to be crucified on. And I thought, well, that's the one, so it's the only one we've got. So I put it on a truck, or they put it on a truck. We went back to the Palais de Sport, and when we got there, I put it up on the stage, and Margot came on to start the rehearsal. She looked at it, she looked at me, and she smiled, and she said, Bill, he's a great star, but he's not Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I think we'll now take a break to have some more music. Mary. What a voice, Mario Lanza. And he's singing? You do the...
Di quella pera from Il Trovatore. It's a wonderfully exciting piece of music. It's short, very to the point. Corelli sings it superbly as well. There are many, but just Lanza, to my mind, has a greatly underestimated voice. Well, I don't know if it's underestimated, it's not appreciated. Of course, he went to the movies and didn't sing in the opera houses of the world. It's a great, great voice.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So now tell me, you've got this huge cross in the Palais de Sport. Was the ballet a success? Did the French like you?
Oh, yes, wonderful. We had but everybody, but because Nureyev was the darling of France at the time. Of course,
yes.
They took him to their heart. They even repronounced his name as Nureyev. And people going around saying, people say Nureyev, people say Nureyev, people say Nureyev, but everybody knew who you meant. And it was wonderful. He got such reception. And Margot, they'd always regarded a little bit as clinical English, because the French are so emotional when they dance and so on. But because her relationship with him, dance-wise, was so warm that they just took Margot to the hearts greatly as well. And everybody came to the performances. Visconti, Danny Kaye, all the stars that were about to in Europe at the time, they all came to see these performances. And one night, it was after the fourth night, Margot had sort of strained a muscle in her right leg, and I used to do the physiotherapy in the company as well to a large degree. And well, I was trained for 4 years,
right,
when I was doing something else. And she will say, Bill, would you come fix my leg? And she had a rather makeshift dressing room. They had to build it out of flats and so on. It had a big door in it, and I went in, and she still had a second act Giselle costume on, and she pulled up the tutu. It was a romantic tutu. Pulled up there, and I was massaging the leg, and a knock came at the door. And she said, would you see who that is, dear? And I said, yes. So I went and I opened the door, and there was this beautiful woman standing there in a white like a man's tailored suit with padded shoulders, and wearing a toque with, I think, are called a cowl.
Oh yes, coming round
under the face like this,
yes.
This magnificent face, and I went, up. And she said, hello, darling, is Margot in? And I said, yeah, is she receiving? And I said, just a moment, Miss, and I couldn't say the name. I turned around, looked at Margot and said, it's my lady Dietrich. She said, I'll send her in. So I said, would you go in, Miss Dietrich? And she said, well, I went to leave. And Margot said, no, come here. Come here. Just continue. Thank you very much. So I went on doing this, you see, and she said, Margot, you were wonderful, darling. You were wonderful. You dance so beautifully. You emote so beautifully. And you look, my dear, you look 25. Who does your makeup? And she said, oh, I do it myself as I was. Well, it's wonderful, but who lights you? And she said, he does, pointing to me. And she said, you mean he can light your face and he can fix your legs? Darling, we should buy him between us. They didn't.
That's the end of another program. We haven't got any more time. Bill, I'm going to have to get you back again in the future because your stories just are wonderful. And I think the listeners will adore it. I adore it.
Oh, good.
So, who else counts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not bored, I'll come back.
Good. Lovely. Terrific. We look forward to seeing you. You've been listening to Interludes with Chris Mackenzie.